Stuart, we've had the confirmation this morning that the club's appealing the red card given to Dan Casey. That a pretty easy decision to try and appeal that one?
Yeah, I'd take it with a smile on your face. Then you'll not have to work out too hard that was always going to be the scenario. I think sometimes what you can do as a football club is you can, see it through your own tinted goggles, and you see situations whereby you feel like you're arguing the case out just for the sake of it. But for me, I've not spoke to one person. I've had contact for other football clubs, I've had contact for people that have been in the game a long time, people in the media, friends, family. I've not spoken to one individual that sees that the same way as what the outcome was on the night. So kind of what I've got that down to is one individual has seen it that way. And I think in the world of football, when you start to look at the traction that's gathered, for me, I think that's wholly unacceptable. I don't think we can ever see that. That scenario where it's so cut and dry, in my opinion, and I know there's an appeal to be heard and all the rest of it, but I just find it baffling. I said it's in the top 3 worst decisions after the game that I've been involved with in a game of football. On hindsight, I've had Saturday and Sunday to look through it again and to kind of compose myself. It's not in the top 3, it's the worst one. It's genuinely the worst one that I've seen. So that makes it pretty apparent what the club's feeling is on it. But as I say, we have to look at this bigger picture as well, and it's kind of worldwide. That game was on the television. We were trying to give the best account of ourselves as we possibly can. We didn't play particularly well as a team, but I don't think that type of decision does the game in this country any favours whatsoever.
Just assume now that common sense will prevail over the next couple of days.
Really difficult for me to comment on what comes next. As I say, that now gets taken out of my hands. We've done our due diligence. We did on Friday night. You put together your appeal, you go through the correct process. I've done that in conjunction with Chief Executive Brian Caldwell. That's been submitted at the earliest opportunity, which was first thing this morning, and then we need to wait and see what happens. Obviously this is time sensitive as well, and the fact that we've got a game against Celtic on Thursday, so from my side I would love to think that we can piece together a panel and hear this case and come up with a very swift and a quick course of action. But again, I can't control that. I can't do anything about that. And I think the other part that I need to probably balance this off with as well, I was asked the question after the game on Friday, what about Kilmarnock's penalty claim? What about the shout for a penalty for them? And I said at the time I genuinely hadn't seen it. I hadn't. I've since seen that that was missed as well. That should be a penalty to Kilmarnock. If I'm on the other side, this is where I'm trying to be really consistent. If I'm on the other side of that for me is as cut and dry a penalty as you're going to get. The referee actually awards us a foul, which it's not our foul. So I struggle to see that one. I also start to get into the realms of, and I had a complaint about this after we had the same referee against Ross County, and that there was 62 minutes of dead time. I says I would look forward to seeing what that was. That was 59 minutes this time of dead time in a game of football. It's not conducive to entertainment. It's not conducive to any of us sitting watching the game, enjoying the game. Coaching staff, supporters, players. You ask the players, just feel like it's stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. And I think that the game can breathe. I think that there's a way of handling games of football. I seen Derek's comments after the game as well, and I spoke to him, and I totally agree with him. I think there are referees in this league, a handful of referees, that in the Dan Casey situation that would have just pulled the two players together and issued a word of warning and get on with the game, lads, let's go, come on, let's just get on with it. But unfortunately that's not the case, and again I think it's another one where nobody really enjoyed the game of football because there's no fluidity to it, there's no flow to the game whatsoever.
I know you've had enough contact with him recently, but have you spoken to Willie Collum since that incident? Are you planning on doing so?
It's not something that I've planned. As I say, you open up a bigger can of worms. I feel like I've been pretty fair in terms of the communication. I've been one of the guys that's spoken up and said that I like the transparency, I like the communication. I'll go over it again. We were told that there's been 3 incorrect calls in our last 5 games. Then you take in the 6th game, which was Friday night. I'm thinking that that's going to come to the wrong call, so that's 4 in 6 games. So the transparency and everything like that's good. The fact that I believe Willie's quite clearly trying to make improvements. We all know, we can see that as plain as day, that improvements need to be made here. But you're dependent on what people see. You're dependent on the calls that people make. Now, whether that's in lifetime where we're going to get mistakes, but when you're getting the opportunity to look at these things and review them, I don't know how many times the referee on Friday looked at that same incident and convinced himself that he was right. I think at one point he's maybe saying that Dan Casey got him by the throat or something. If that's what you think, you've seen it first, then that's fine. But when you get a chance to look at that 6 or 7 times on a monitor, that's not what you've seen. So you're relying on the actions of other people. It's the same. In football, you try and pass off a message. Sometimes the players don't quite execute that as well as you possibly can, and you continue to strive to improve. But from my side, as much as Willie's trying to make things better here, I think it's suffice to say that recently that's certainly not been the case. And it's a great deal of frustration for us all, great deal of frustration for us at Motherwell, that 4 big decisions, 4 key decisions in 6 games, it really isn't a great ratio, really not a good ratio. So we need that to improve. I'm sure the game as a whole needs it to improve, and that's only our case. If you go and speak to some of the other clubs, they'll have a very similar feel to myself.
Just in terms of, the timing of it, with it being the 23rd of December, your next game Boxing Day, are you really hoping that somewhere in that period you'll be able to get that hearing, that you won't want the Christmas period to work against you? Because at any other time of the year you'd probably get a fast-tracked hearing before that game, but you never know what can really happen when it's 23rd, 24th, 25th of December.
Well, I hope so, because we get given a fixture schedule, and I'm like all the rest of the players and probably the majority of clubs, we're in training Christmas Day, we'll be in first thing, it's a full working day for us. So I would love to think if we're going to put these fixtures out and we're going to go through this process over the festive period, then I would love to think that everything sort of works the exact same way, because these situations are going to appear, they may appear again on Boxing Day, there may be appeals again, so I would love to think that can be fast tracked, and that can be in a position where if there's an incorrect call, players are still available to play in the very next fixture, because again, that would be me saying to the players, lads, just stay in your house on Christmas Day and we'll no bother preparing for Celtic away.
I don't know if you heard Ian Maxwell on Sports Sound Saturday, he was talking about the need to eradicate these what are called toe curlers, where 99.9% of people think that the referee's wrong. I think he did say potentially Friday night was an example. Is that a kind of what you think should be the priority, or does it go deeper than that? You're talking about the stop-start nature of the game. Is it much more than that we need to sort out as a game of Scottish football?
Yeah, I think the toe curlers, as Ian's described it, those are the ones, Gav, that you and I would sit here and, they're not difficult to see. If you've missed it in live time, as I say, when you go back to the screen, then the whole thing becomes very apparent. I think what you have to do at that point, in my opinion, I always talk about dropping ego. I speak to my players about it. I have words with myself at times about dropping the ego, and sometimes we've got to hold a hand up and say, I got that wrong, guys. I've seen that a completely different way. So from my side, there's been occasions where the checks and the look at things has been too brief. I think we've seen that, haven't we, in recent times. I think last week against Dundee United, I would suggest that it's a really, really quick check and then we move on with the game and we've missed something. The cup final being a case for that as well. We quickly check it and we move on. And there's other times where we actually look at it far too many times and try and convince ourselves that what you first seen was correct. And it's, as you say, 99.9% of everyone that follows football doesn't see it the same way. So there are a number of different factors in it. I'm always huge on that. I just feel that level of communication, but communication on the pitch, I talk about it. A game of football is not about officials. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's all encompassing. Trying to put the best product forward. Trying to make sure that we put the best spectacle forward. I was waxing lyrical the week before with the 3 fixtures on the Saturday about the amount of goals that were raining in and the entertainment that was there. And I love to see that personally for Scottish football. Always want my team to come out on the right side of it. Of course you do, from a selfish standpoint. But we want to see the most entertaining part of football. I've brought up the fact about the dead time in the game of football. We can help that as players and coaching staff, trying to make sure that games go as much as possible. But I think people will be people will understand that the officials can have a major impact on that. And I think sometimes just that level of communication, that, you know, being humble, being able to communicate with players, sometimes you get things wrong. And I say this purely from a selfish side of things and a personal side of things, that the people and the officials that I got on well with understand that it's an emotive sport. The guys that have that wee bit of humility, that can communicate with you, that can sometimes hold their hands up when they feel that they've maybe made an error or made a slight mistake in the game. We as competitors within football, I spoke to somebody about this yesterday in great detail, that, you know, I can accept mistakes, but the bit I really challenge with is that there's an obvious error and you're still trying to double down on it and trying to tell people that you're 100% right. You're trying to find justification for it. You're starting to talk about non-negligible force and all this type of stuff. You're trying to find a way to justify what you've done. And I personally don't see it that way. Sometimes I genuinely am okay with somebody just putting their hands up and saying, I think I may have got that one wrong. I can move on at that point, but I always talk about being so black and white as I am. I struggle when you double down on it, when the rest is that 99.9% that you speak of, Gav, can see it a totally different way.
I mean, just specifically on Dan, you're also waiting for this appeal to come. How does that impact the way you train during the week and team selection and all that type of things? You've been an ever-present in your team. How does it impact all that when you are dealing with a wee bit of the unknown in terms of whether he's actually going to be able to play or not on Thursday?
It's difficult. I find it a challenge. I find it a challenge in a scenario where I don't believe for a second that should be the case. So again, you feel as if you're getting punished again for it. Dan will feel as if he's getting punished again. Been on tenterhooks, not knowing whether he's going to be able to be involved for us. I've always spoken about it. Don't know if I do it. I certainly don't think I do it much different from anybody else. But from today and moving forward to Thursday, we go really team specific. Everything we do and everything we work towards is having specific roles and jobs in the team. And long before the game kicks off on Thursday, the group of players know who's starting and they know who's on the bench. So that makes it a bit of a challenge. That makes it a wee bit of an unknown for us all, I suppose. And I need to make a judgment call on that as to how forceful I am with some of the level of information I put across, as to not knowing whether Dan can be involved in the game or not. So yeah, another good point, which is the fallout from it, which I think a lot of people maybe don't appreciate. It's just more so the instant and the flashpoint at the time, as opposed to the impact it has moving forward.
We spoke to Liam Gordon after the game about it as well, just the way you're telling your players to sort of maybe attack or defend certain situations in a VAR era. Is there anything you've particularly changed in what you tell players about how you go into certain situations and that in the era of VAR? Yeah,
there's a couple of things, and I've brought this up at a few meetings. I've specifically asked the officials that should I now be coaching my players a different way, and I'll give you a couple of examples of that. We had a big one about pulling jerseys and pulling players, and we had the penalty incident with Kofi Balmer up in Dingwall at 0-0, which wasn't given, which we were told was incorrect. So I'm speaking to my players about not pulling, not grabbing jerseys, not holding arms, and then after the event we're told we should have had a penalty. I had a big thing about I've had a big thing previously about head knocks and various things like that, and then we get to a situation against Dundee where Kofi's lying splattered in blood and holding his face and motionless, and the game continues. And then the other big one that I'd had was this idea of the ball coming over your shoulder. If you remember last season, and I know I go specific on incidents, but the ball coming over your shoulder and making contact with the ball. I don't know if you remember Jack Vale last year at Aberdeen. The majority have told me I'm completely wrong by that, and it's a stonewall red card, and that's all there is to it. You actually look at Steve Seddon's penalty claim against Dundee United, almost a carbon copy of what Jack Vale gets sent off for. So one of the things that we've actually now spoke to our players about is, as that ball's coming over your shoulder, the ball's loose, it's there to be intercepted or played or whatever. We've actually spoke to our players now about, sometimes we feel we have to give that up because you're running the risk of a red card. Even if the player runs into you, even if the player comes in full pace, if you go to control that ball and the player runs into you. So I was always told, I remember being in the media and asking, so this is changing the way that we're coaching the game, this is changing the way we're thinking about the game and how I'm asking players to play, and I was told categorically we'll never be changed, we're not changing the game, we're not going to change the game. Without question it is. There's 3, 4, maybe 5 scenarios now which I deal with a completely different way, and we coach the players on it. If that happens, to the ball coming over somebody's shoulder, one of your guys goes to intercept it in training, I'll call a halt to it, because we've been dealt a red card for that and been told that it's 100% right. So it does change the way that your outlook is on the game.
Stuart, just to touch on Celtic, obviously dropping points yesterday, was you expect them to come out flying off the back of that?
I just always expect Celtic to be their best version. I just think that their level of consistency for such a long time has been incredible. They constantly pose you a threat. I think you can see that relentless nature in how they attack games of football, and maybe one or two will talk about it not being their best performance yesterday, and bit of a surprise not to see them in the score sheet in any game of football, no matter who they're playing against, with the quality that they have. But it's not so much that I expect a reaction. I just expect Celtic to do what they've been doing for a number of years now, and finding that level of consistency and being incredibly difficult to go and play against at Celtic Park.
Just a little bit more broadly about football this time of year, do you find it a little bit more challenging, even throughout Christmas, more packed fixture schedule? Do players feel any sort of different?
No, I think we've made peace in the lead up to this. Everyone has. I think that there's no winter shutdown, no winter break, fine, and just a number of games that come. How we need to look after ourselves in between games, how we need to patch up players, trying to get that level of how much you work between games and how much recovery you put in there. It's the job, I keep saying it, it's what you sign up for. I love football, I would expect every single player that plays. I think there should always be this burning desire to do it as much as you can. I didn't feel that way on Friday night, I can assure you, and it took me a wee while on Saturday based on a couple of things that come across, but I just feel that you'll struggle if you're feeling sorry for yourself with the number of fixtures and playing through Christmas and New Year. I think you'll embrace it, and you'll start to do well if you really take it on and understand that's the task in hand.
How's team news wise? Steve Seddon all right after play?
But we're going to need further investigation into his sustained a bit of an ankle knock. He was struggling to run, so again probably looking further into that again today. Hopeful it's nothing too serious, but we're just waiting to see how it settled down Saturday, Sunday, before we go into kind of any further thought process with him. But I think the fact he came off the pitch probably indicates he's not a guy that misses much, if anything. He hasn't to this point. He's been available for everything. So a slight concern on that, but we'll not overreact. We'll see how he goes.
Everything else all right?
From where we were, yeah, from the players that were available were pretty much the same. Illness, yeah, he was ill on Friday, so we'll have him back into train today.